Hi guys, it's Miss Molly. I'm here for this week's edition of Magical Monday. I'm so sorry that we missed you last week. We had a little bit of a crazy week last week here at the library, but we're back. So if you haven't picked up your craft for this week for Magic Mondays, definitely do. It's a felt tie for your house that you can make. We still have a bunch left, and if you have any questions, I'm here until closing today, so definitely make sure to give us a call, and I can definitely answer any of your questions, or if I'm busy, any of the other children's staff can. Are you guys ready for some trivia? Yeah? Okay. So, let's see. Let's start with some easy things. Do any of you guys know how many people founded Hogwarts? There were 4 houses, which is a clue. So there was 4 founders for Hogwarts, and each one of them founded a house. Do you guys know the names of the founders? Let's give you some hints. So one of them really was good at talking to snakes, and it comes up in Chamber of Secrets. All of their names sound very similar to their houses, and all of the houses were after their last names. So we had Salazar Slytherin, who obviously made Slytherin. There was Helga Hufflepuff, who founded Hufflepuff. There was Godric Gryffindor, who founded Gryffindor, and Marina Ravenclaw, who founded Ravenclaw. Pretty obvious, but still, they had first names. They were people who founded Hogwarts like hundreds of years ago. They were really old. Do any of you guys know how the students are sorted through all of their houses? There is one specific hat that's very special that you see at the beginning of when Harry gets to Hogwarts. It is the sorting hat. It is this magical hat that lives in the headmaster's office when the choosing ceremony isn't happening, and it sings a song and it talks to you, and it's really cool, and it tells you what house you're in. Do you guys know how to actually get into the Gryffindor common room? It happens right in the book after they're all put into their houses in the first book. For the Gryffindors, all of the different common rooms are hidden, and Gryffindor's is in a tower, and it's actually hidden behind a giant painting of a fat lady. It's literally known as the painting of the fat lady. It's kind of funny. So the fat lady, you have to tell her the password, and the password changes, and that's how you get into the Gryffindor common room. Do you guys know where any of the other common rooms are? Where do you think that the Slytherin one would be, considering that Slytherins have a reputation for being kind of dark and mysterious and cunning, which aren't necessarily bad things, but, a lot of Death Eaters came out of Slytherin, not necessarily the best thing. So the Slytherin common room, which they sneak into later, is actually in the dungeons. It's like way under the bowels of the castle. Do you guys know the ghost of Ravenclaw? This one's a little bit more obscure, but she's a very important figure later in the books, in the 7th book. She gives Harry a really important clue. So her name is actually the Grey Lady, and she is Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter. So when they're trying to find the diadem during the 7th book, she has some really important information. They have to get it out of her. Do you guys know the name for the ghost for Gryffindor? He's a little bit more excitable and interesting. His name is Nearly Headless Nick. And if you guys remember during the first book, Hermione asks him, how can you be nearly headless? And he takes his head off and it goes like this. And there's like this little bit that's holding it on, and it's really gross. And I guess when they tried to kill him, they tried to take his head off, and they didn't do a great job, which is not the best. Let's see what else. Do you guys know who the head of Gryffindor house is? She's kind of like a really cool, tough witch. She has a really nice Scottish accent. She's played by Maggie Smith during the movies, who's one of my personal favorite actresses. You guys aren't going to care about that, but that's okay. Her name is Minerva McGonagall, and do you guys know what class she teaches? She actually teaches Transfiguration, which is when you actually transform yourself into something else. So at one class, they're trying to change their pets or animals or rats into cups. And when they're trying to do that, if you guys remember that scene, actually what happens is Ron's wand is broken. And he like half turns it into a cup. And it's like this cup and it's squeaking and it's a mess. But it's Harry Potter. It's still pretty fun. Do you guys know who the head of Slytherin house is? He has long, greasy hair. He didn't exactly get along with Harry's dad, so he dislikes Harry as a result. He teaches what class? He teaches potions, and his name is Snape. He's the one that is like always seems like he's out to get Harry. You learn more about him as the books go on, but it may not always be the case. Do you guys know who the head of Hufflepuff house is? She's a character that's a little bit more quiet, but she's still really cool, and people would not survive without her. The head of Hufflepuff is Professor Pomona Sprout. So if you guys remember in the books, when they have to take the mandrakes out and they're like these screaming plant babies and they're really weird and kind of freaky, that's her. She's the one who is in the greenhouses and who teaches them all about plants. And the plants are really important because they also have to make potions, and they can't make the potions without some of the plants, and it all feeds into each other. It's all very important. Let's see what else we have. So, do you guys know which of the founders actually left? He had a disagreement with the other three founders, and he left, and kind of like, it was this big to-do. It was actually Salazar Slytherin, which if you think about it, kind of makes sense for why he didn't Slytherin later on. People kind of don't like them. They have a shady reputation. Like, their founder got into a fight with everyone else at Hogwarts, and they just stopped talking, and he left. Not great. Do you guys know what the name for the person who catches the golden snitch during Quidditch is? I know we're kind of going a little bit different, but Quidditch is my personal favorite. I was on my Quidditch team during school. Yes, those are an actual thing. If you have questions, I can answer them. The position that is also the position that Harry is, and if you catch the snitch, it ends the game. The position is actually called a seeker, and they have to fly around this giant pitch. It's like the size of a soccer field on their brooms, and they have to try and catch a snitch, which is like this big, and it's really fast, and it flies around. But if they catch it, it ends the game. Do you guys know which Hogwarts teaching position is cursed? So what that means is there's one Hogwarts professor that seems to have a different teacher each year, and it's kind of becoming a running joke that it's cursed because no one can keep it. But it's also a really important class, and Harry's really good at it. The class is actually Defense Against the Dark Arts. So, do you guys remember the names of any of the teachers for it? There was Gilderoy Lockhart, who was this extremely full of himself. He thought he was the coolest thing ever, and like loved to look at pictures of himself. It was very ridiculous. The second year at Hogwarts, and during the third year at Hogwarts, there was actually a really cool professor, and he was cool for kind of different ways. Do you guys remember his name? His name was Remus Lupin, and he was actually the best friend of Harry's dad. So he knew Harry, and he kind of helped him out a little bit more. But he also had a really important secret. when he was a child, he was bitten by a werewolf. And what happens when you're bitten by a werewolf is, unfortunately, you turn into a werewolf. And there's no way to kind of fix that. So there was that secret. Didn't end too well. Ended with him having to, leave. And speaking of not super great things, there is the big baddie in all of the books. Do you guys remember what his name is? It's something that they don't say because they call him He Who Must Not Be Named, and everyone's afraid to speak of him as if it'll summon him. His name was Lord Voldemort, and actually, that name is, you take all those letters and you rearrange them, and it actually spells out his real name, which you learn in the second book when Harry's in the Chamber of Secrets. So his actual name was Tom Riddle, and you find out that he's actually not that different. He just got really angry and became this really big bad guy, and just really not happy. So, do you guys know any of the names of the other ghosts? There's a whole bunch of them. But there's ghosts for Hufflepuff, for Slytherin, for Gryffindor. We talked about the ones for Ravenclaw and for Gryffindor. There's one that's really fun. His name is actually the Bloody Baron. And he flies around Hogwarts and he tries to get into sword fights with people because he was known for getting into sword fights. Or how about we switch back to something more magical? I mean, ghosts are cool and they're magical, but they're more spooky. Do you guys know what any of the cores of the wands are for any of the characters, or just what they can be made out of? There's a couple different things. There's a unicorn hair, which can be put into it. There is a phoenix feather, which can be put into it. And they put these into the center of the wood, and it allows the wizards and the witches to actually do magic. It's really cool. Do you guys know where Hogwarts actually is? Because there's actually a castle from the movies that they filmed at that's in Great Britain, in England, that is kind of the idea of where the location is. I'll give you a hint. It's also where the author is from. It is in actually Scotland, which, if you guys don't know what Scotland is, in the Big Island. So Britain is a big island, and way up top where all the mountains are and everything, there's this own region. It's called Scotland, and it has its whole other culture, but they're part of Great Britain as a country. Do you guys know how many brothers Ron had? He had a bunch. The running joke was that the Weasleys had so many kids. So there was, let's see if you can name any of them. There was Percy, who was kind of a prat. There were the twins, who, George and Fred, who were always trying to play tricks on people and jokes, and oh my goodness. Let's see what else. Can you guys name any of the other ones? Or how about this? Can you guys name Ron's sister? She plays a really important role in the second book. I mean, she plays a really important role later on. Her name is Ginny, and she actually has a giant crush on Harry. But she kind of gets over it, and she learns how to become his friend. Do you guys know how many contestants there usually are during the Goblet of Fire when they have the Triwizard Tournament? The Goblet of Fire chooses all the contestants, and there's 2 other wizarding schools that come to Hogwarts, and they have this big competition. And a bunch of people put their names into the Goblet of Fire, and at the end of 2 days, it spits out the names, and it tells you who's going to be the contestants. So the contestants, there's actually 3 of them. So there's one from Beauxbatons, which is an academy in France, and then there is also the more kind of dark, creepy school that's, it's not really said where it is, but it's somewhere in the Baltic region. They're very big, and it's all a boys' school, and they come into the Great Hall, and it's all very serious, and they have a kind of a crazy dance. and there's one from Hogwarts, so there's 3 altogether. But do you guys remember what happens in the 4th book and why there's not just 3? There's actually 4 because something happened with the Goblet of Fire. They're not quite sure what, but Harry is also chosen as a contestant, which makes no sense, and they can't quite figure out why. And some information comes in later and you learn about that, but overall it wasn't supposed to happen. And Harry was too young. The Ministry of Magic made a rule against people as young as him participating. It wasn't great, but you know, it happens. Do you guys know the animals that are the symbols for any of the houses? You kind of get it when you watch the Quidditch matches, you kind of get a hint towards it. Or if you've ever seen any of the crests, which is the little symbol for each of the houses, each house kind of has like one animal that's specific to them. So with Gryffindors, it's actually lions. And with Slytherins, do you guys have any idea? It's actually snakes, which is... I don't like snakes. I don't know if you guys like snakes. I don't like snakes. And for Hufflepuffs, it's actually kind of a weird animal. But if you've ever heard of badgers are like these big, tough... They're not rodents, but they're like big and they have claws and they have this big tail, and you don't want to mess with them, especially honey badgers. Or there's also Ravenclaw, which has my personal favorite, but I mean, I'm also a Ravenclaw, so I'm a little bit biased. Ravenclaw is actually a raven. You can kind of figure it out from, the name, which is silly. But, yeah, they have a raven. Can you guys name any of the colors of the houses? So, each house, kind of like how they have the symbol, they also have 2 colors that are specific to them. And if you guys picked up your crafts already, they actually have different houses which have the colors because the ties have the colors. So for Gryffindor, there's actually 2 colors. Well, all of them have 2 colors. There's scarlet, which is like a dark red, and there's gold. And that's the colors for everything with Hogwarts. For Ravenclaw, there is a deeper blue and silver, and they don't really deviate away from that. A couple of the houses have like variations, but those 2 are really solid. Occasionally Gryffindor will have some black in there. For Hufflepuff, they have bright yellow and black. And for Slytherin, they have some green and silver, and occasionally some black, which maybe is like a hint of like the fact that they're dark and mysterious. They're not evil, but they have a bad reputation. I mean, their founder just kind of like left. It happens. What are you gonna do? Alright guys, so we have been on here for a little bit, so I've given you guys a bunch of questions. I'm gonna give you one last one before we sign off. And my question to you is, do you guys remember the name of Ron's pet, and what was he? So he was a rat, which I don't get why you'd want a rat as a pet, but I also don't like creepy crawly things. And his name was Scabbers, and he wasn't exactly the best pet, because you find out some bad things about him later. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call at the library. And if you haven't picked up your kit, make sure to pick up your kit. We still have a bunch left. Also, the code for today, if you do participate on Beanstack, is 2345. And if you forget, you can always call us. We have them all available. Don't forget to log all of your activity on Beanstack. We'll be back later this week with some STEAM Thursday and some Baby Storytime Wednesday if you have little sisters or brothers. And on Friday, we also have some book talks for like 4th through 7th grade. I've read a bunch of books and I have a lot of thoughts for you guys and some recommendations, and we'll let you know what they're about if you guys are stuck but you want to keep reading during the summer. So that's all I have for you guys. I'm so glad you joined me. I had a whole bunch of fun, and we'll be back next Monday at 2:30 with another Magical Monday. This time it'll be Magnus Chase themed, and I have a whole bunch more trivia for you and a whole nother craft. I'll see you guys later. Bye!